Hey everyone, welcome to. Shut up, John. Hey everyone, welcome to Two Marine Dads, episode number 2. I'm Tyler.
And I'm John.
And today we have another Marine Dad as a guest. This is Lester. Him and I served together at VMGR 452 back in the day, and we've been good friends ever since. So, Lester, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit better?
Hey everybody, I'm Lester. I live in the Pittsburgh area. Grew up around here. After graduating from high school, I went to the University of Pittsburgh. I spent 3 years there, and eventually I dropped out. I enlisted in the Marine Corps, where, of course, I met Tyler, became a navigator on KC-130s, did a tour in Iraq in 2004, got out of the Marines in 2006, and I finished my degree at Ohio State, where my fiance at the time was working. We have since been married for 14 years. But I got my degree in economics at OSU. I moved back to Pittsburgh to start at a company called Smith Barney, which is no longer in existence. Now it's Morgan Stanley. But I joined there to work with my dad, my sister, who had been in the business for a little while. And
was that a buyout thing, Lester? The Morgan Stanley to?
Yeah, it was. I joined Smith Barney in 2007, right as the world was about to fall apart. And then the whole, every financial institution was affected in some way, but
right.
That culminated in Smith Barney and Morgan Stanley joining, and just creating a huge entity, which I think by 2009 it was Morgan Stanley. But I spent 2007 to 2015 with that organization. The three of us with our awesome assistant left Morgan Stanley and created our own firm called BOTKIN Family Wealth. So in March, it'll be 6 years that we've been doing this, but we're a financial planning and investment firm. And best thing I ever did other than marry my wife and join the Marine Corps for sure. But yeah, so I've got a 7-year-old son, I got a 5-year-old daughter, and of course my wife of 14 years. And life is pretty good other than this pandemic. And
I like how you avoided mentioning her age.
Yeah.
So you guys are running your own outfit now. You, your dad, and your sister, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
we've been. Go ahead.
Tell everybody. I know the story. I know it pretty well, but tell everybody the story about how you guys went from, being part of a big firm to starting your own gig.
Yeah, it's that's a big decision when you're in our world, and when you're with the large financial institutions, the big wirehouses, what they call them. I think most people look at that as kind of the pinnacle of this business. If you're with a Merrill or a Morgan, where else do you have to go? And when you do this job, you are at the mercy of you. You have to go find clients. The corporation isn't going to find them for you. It's up to you to go find folks, invest their money, and then then earn your living off of that. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your
how'd you say
primary question?
Starting your own firm.
The whole story, getting your how all that this top secret squirrel of you in the middle of the night working on your office and all that other stuff.
Yeah, so I just happened to. You're always getting calls about going to one firm or another. Hey, come to XYZ firm. It's so much better than where you are.
Headhunting kind of stuff.
Yeah. But one day I actually it was actually the 5th call from this guy who said, "Hey, let's go have breakfast. I just want to tell you about being independent, and you can run your own firm, and you can do your own P&L and run the business the way you wanted." And I eventually I capitulated. We went to Brewster's, the bagel shop down the road, and he was telling me all about this, and I thought,
wait, so he was telling you to go do your own thing, or was he trying to hire you to come do his thing?
So when you're with when you run your own business, you need a third party.
Right.
Unless, Madoff occurred because there was no third party. So, that's the reality of it. So you need a large institution behind you, and their main function is the custodian of the money. So somebody gives you money, it needs to be held somewhere. It's not held with Botkin Family Wealth. It's
kind of like an
held,
escrow
in our
deal.
case, well, think of Fidelity or Vanguard or Pershing or
okay.
Anywhere you get a statement and there's a name on the bottom of the statement, it's still a corporation. But we partner with a company called LPL. They're the largest independent broker dealer. They have about 16,000 people like us who contract with them. But we effectively pay them for their services. But anytime you write a check, you may get a check out to them, and they are the ones we operate off their technology. They hold the money, so always necessary in our business. So anyway, I think we talked about this, my family and I, for a good year and a half before we made the decision. And really the thing that really kickstarted it was this building, this beautiful building that looks kind of like a house, came for sale about a mile down the road from our former firm. And I think it sat there for a couple of months, no offers. And my brother-in-law happens to be a real estate agent, so he just took us to see it. And anyway, it was perfect. And we made the decision, we're gonna break out on our own. We're gonna do this ourselves. And but when you work for a big institution in the brokerage business, if they catch wind that you're going to leave, you're immediately fired. And you're an at-will employee. It doesn't mean you're fired for cause, but you are fired. It doesn't matter. They will lay you off. And the key is to get your clients, to say, boy, Les was fired. Must be bad. I'm not going with them to their new firm. Because always the goal is get your old clients to your new firm, and then you have a already thriving business. Hopefully when you open the door.
And when you say laid off, fired, like it's lock the doors, we throw your shit out on the front porch kind of fired, right?
That thing.
Yeah, that's right. That's quartered out, and fortunately it never came to that.
Right.
But, when we built out this office, 5,000 yards from our old building, in the middle of the night, when I would come, I would park in the back of the building. I'd keep all the lights off and close the blinds. But we had cable companies and computer companies and folks who did our crown molding and painted and did windows. But we had them all sign disclosure confidentiality agreements that said, "Oh, you can't say who we are." We did this under an LLC. All perfectly legal, but all in the goal of having no one find out that we were doing this, because once you get this things up and running, you go into your firm and you say, "Hey, I quit, basically.
Bye.
I resign. Yeah, I'm leaving." And the rule is, in our world, you can only take names, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, a very limited amount of information. No account numbers. No.
Right.
Nothing personal. And as long as you do that, this is actually no longer the rule in the industry. But back when we did it, as long as you take only those things, they will not sue you. Because in the old days, restraining orders and do not contact through legal means was always the way to get people from taking a firm's clients with them. But we had a pretty decent time in being able to contact everybody, get everybody in the door as clients. We had a pretty good success rate, and it was pretty crazy just trying to keep everything secret. I mean, we told nobody.
I could just imagine seeing you in the office at dark with NVGs on, trying to pick paint color out.
Yeah, right. It was a very nerve-wracking thing, because again, the disclosures in our industry are enormous, and there's a public record of exactly what has happened throughout all of our careers, and if you're fired, it shows up on there. client wants to do business with you. They look, oh, you were fired from this big institution. I wonder why. Well, that's why they do it, because they want to retain their clientele, so you don't take them. Anyway, life is greener out here than with a large corporation, and we're having the time of our lives. So.
Yeah, and like it's you, your dad, and your sister, right? All three of you kind of doing your own little bits and pieces for the business.
Yeah, it's really one. I mean, we are one entity. We all work with every client in some capacity. Most of us most clients have their go-to person that they like to work with most. But this works really well because there's no competition. I mean, somebody comes in the door and that person is all of our clients. Whereas in a typical brokerage firm, if somebody wants to come in and say, "Hey, I have money to invest," it's like wolves.
It's like a fucking car dealership.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And that's just kind of an unpleasant way to go about your day when you're working off commissions and fees and things like that. So it's very nice. We work with who we want to work with, and we always say we're the ultimate low pressure folks when someone comes in the door. So I think people like that.
So why was there a catalyst? Was there a moment where you were just like, okay, I got to start my own thing. I'm pulling my hair out. I can't do this. You pulled all your hair out, I guess, but.
Yeah, there were a lot of things, and Morgan Stanley was a great place for us to kind of build our career, but it also let us know what kind of we didn't want to deal with over time. So, when you bring in an account, we work almost exclusively on a fee basis now. So somebody comes in and gives you $500,000, you're charging a fee on that amount of money to manage it. And when you're at a large institution, most of those firms take anywhere from 50 to 70 cents on the dollar of that fee, and you get the rest. So we were, yeah, that's right. And we always, it'd be one thing if you were at an institution like that and people were just pouring in the door because of your cachet and all your deep research and knowledge, but no firm is that way. I'm sure that existed in the 80s with a Smith Barney or a Merrill Lynch to some degree, but no one was walking in the door there. I mean, I made that example 10 minutes ago, but no one was really walking in the door and they're like, "Oh, I need to invest money." It's all you do seminars to try to attract clients to tell you who you are. You have friends and family, and they have friends and family. I mean, that's how you build these businesses. So, if someone's taking 60 cents of every dollar you make, then it's got to be for something. And, and this is not to hit on our old employer, but none of those firms can do that something that's worth
60 cents of what you're
2/3 of every dollar.
Especially when you are the one going out doing all the work, getting your non-endemic clients and word of mouth and all that other stuff. And at the flip of a switch, they can take it all away from you too.
That's right. And I think another downside of being part of a public company in that business is, Wall Street. I mean, it is what we do. We invest people's money, but Wall Street's always looking at quarterly and annual earnings and what are your profit margins and what are your different sources of revenue that drive the stock price. And, all of these firms have tried to tie lending in with investing. So you've got, $1 million invested in an account. It is in those firms' interests to say, "Hey, let's put a line of credit on your account. You can borrow, 50 cents on the dollar if you want to go buy a investment property or a vacation home or, buy a new roof or something like that." So there's a line of credit on top of your investment account. And, that was a separate stream of revenue. They got into the mortgage business, which they were terrible at. In our world, it's all about first-class service. And, you come to us and, we may not be mortgage dealers or be able to write a mortgage for you, but we're going to give you the best people possible to get it done, and people we trust and who are good and who are going to call you back, like anything, whether it's estate planning, you got to find a good attorney, or
Yeah, the mortgage industry is totally centered around the cheapest fucking interest rate you can get. That's all anybody cares about.
yeah, yeah. So you got your client with X dollars with you, large amounts of money. You give them to the mortgage arm of your firm, and then they don't call them for 3 or 4 days, and they can't speak properly to them on the phone, or it was just it was a frustrating experience. And there's a mandate that you had to do a certain number of those every year if you wanted to keep your payments.
Yikes!
So it was like an annual thing where you had to figure out, if my commission's 40% this year, well, next year I got to do 10% more business to do the same grid percentage to get 40 cents on the dollar again. And it was a constant hurdle that was always changing, and it got tough. And really, this market or this business, you are to some degree at the mercy of the market, because if you're investing dollars and you're paid on those dollars, and the market drops 30% or the market goes up 30%, that's going to have a big effect on your business and how you perform in the future. So
it's a little bit more stable. You do it this way, a lot more stable.
Yeah. There's no, our broker dealer has their own rules, but instead of keeping 40 cents on the dollar, we keep about 90 cents on the dollar by comparison. Now we've got a nice building to maintain, and we have our assistant to pay, and we do advertising, and we have budgets for everything. But at the end of the day, it's still a pretty big difference, and we have the freedom to pretty much do what we want. I mean, we do financial planning and investing, and that's it. So,
awesome.
Yeah, and kind of I guess to spin off of that a little bit, one of the things having you on the podcast, kind of with things are going, I guess, again, who knows what's going to happen, but it's more and more likely Biden's going to be the president. I don't think anybody who would tell you otherwise knows what they're talking about right now. It's got a lot of people scared with the economy and stuff. Kind of a little disclaimer, everybody. Again, this podcast is for fun and for entertainment. We're not going to give you guys financial advice, tell you what to do. We're not trying to sell you anything. All that mumbo jumbo you hear for the legalese, if you will. So with that being said, we're going to talk, the three of us, kind of what we see with the economy, what we do with our money, where we're going with things. All three of us are relatively successful people. Lester, you've got your own business running. You guys are doing fantastic with that. I mean, just bought a beautiful brand new house and driving Alfa Romero around, and I was definitely jealous when I showed up with a Suburban and I don't have a fast car anymore. Not to mention you've got 8 or 10 acres you can hunt on right off your back porch with a bass pond.
I'm lucky.
I mean, that's goals I think a lot of people strive to. I mean, I'm sitting here in a house doing my own thing, playing video games, trying to make a living doing a podcast, a little bit of real estate investing, all sorts of little gigs. And John, he's a patented inventor. He's got a book that's going to be coming out here pretty soon. He's still working at the corporate grind, but he's making America great by building the border wall and hostile territory.
They were shooting at us.
Yeah, not just that, but then the protesters. I don't know who's more scary, the shots or the protesters. But
at least
I personally, I don't think based on the policies that you see with the new incoming administration, I think business is going to suffer in general. I don't think it's going to tank. Things are just going too good. I mean, they would really have to try hard to hurt the economy right now. Even with you get another coronavirus lockdown, obviously there's some externalities that can really make a problem. But from what I see, the fundamentals, and you can speak more to this, Lester, because you definitely dive into these a lot more than I do. But just in general, the economy looks pretty good. There's bubbles in certain places and not, but there's always somewhere to put your money to make money, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not to get into too many of the details, but if with the administration, if Biden becomes the president, which I'm sure he will, if the Senate stays at 51, I guess there's a chance it could go to 50-50, and then, Harris would be the deciding vote. But markets love divided government.
Right.
It's always been that way. The best S&P 500 returns throughout history have been a Democrat president and a divided Congress, really a Republican
Congress.
And what that means is government can't do anything.
Right, exactly. They can't break.
That's a sad.
They can't break anything more than they've already done it.
Right. That's kind of a sad thing to say, but as long as they can't actually legislate and do anything, markets don't like uncertainty. So on the flip side, if the Senate were to flip, that would, the most obvious thing that would mean is that they could probably introduce some tax legislation that's gonna, I don't know if they would reverse what Trump did or just increase the corporate tax rate.
Well, what a lot of people don't understand is Trump's tax cuts expire at 2025 anyways.
Right.
And a lot of, they don't have to do anything. They just got to ride the clock out, and the tax cuts are going to revert. Now, I think the corporate tax cut doesn't, but it's all the individual tax rates are what revert.
Right. I don't actually know the expiration of the corporate tax rate, but
I don't think there is. I'm pretty sure it's permanent.
Yeah. But I'm sure that would be their dream to get that reversed. And hey, they get control now, or they get in control in 2 years, then that's possible. But this is not like we're not in a vacuum. If that were to happen, companies adapt. You certainly take some earnings off the market if tax rates go.
Yeah.
Obviously, companies got less dollars at the end of the day to work with. But
well, it doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. There's always somewhere that you can make money.
Yeah.
The problem is you got to be ahead of the curve, which is extraordinarily difficult to do. But in the finance world, in your world, there's all sorts of ways you can hedge investments in different things. Just because it's in the stock market doesn't mean you're not investing in gold or you're not investing in real estate. There's funds that's what they do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're right. And one thing to say about that, hedges are important, and when we build portfolios to provide people an income, which is a big part of what we do, we're always going to have a part of the portfolio that's in bonds or fixed income, gold. We started investing in gold about 1.5 years ago. Never thought we would, but the landscape changed a little bit. But we're looking for assets that they're likely to give us relatively low returns, but assets that aren't affected by the overall market. And why you need those is, some people get freaked out about volatility, rightly so, when they see their dollars plummet like back in March. But more importantly, if somebody's spending X dollars out of their portfolio and the market gets killed, we want to have something that we can liquidate that is unlikely to have gotten killed in that environment or even gone up, like a treasury bond or something like that,
right,
so that we can spend those things while we wait for the other thing to recover. And that's how you don't run out of money during a 20 or 30 year retirement, is to be diversified. But what I do want to say is very few people became wealthy or accumulated wealth by picking the right investment or picking the best investment, or even by starting a company that became a big success.
I forget who it was. Somebody did a research process, a big math research kind of paper on like 3 paths. People that just steady invested. All they did was invest steadily over time. And they basically did it all in, like, I think it was all on like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or something. It was one of them. What are those called?
Index funds?
Yeah, it was just an index fund. They just did one index fund, and that was it.
Yeah.
And they did that. Then they did somebody who, like a lot of people do, when they see the market crash, they panic sell, and then they buy again when the market starts to come back up. And then they did somebody who called it perfectly. They sold at the top, like had 20/20 hindsight kind of deal. They sold it at the top and bought it at the bottom. And they found that the people that invest, you compared that over the long run, they did like, it was like 10 or 15 years. So they got like 2 full market cycles in. And it was incredible because the person that sold it at the top and bought it at the bottom just barely did better than the person that did steady. And then the person that panic sold and bought fucking lost their ass, obviously. But that idea of, who's it, Warren Buffett, that said, buy when everybody else sells and sell when everybody else buys kind of deal. It's oversimplification, but it's so powerful for people to just stay calm when things are panicked. Like I've got friends that I've talked to in the last couple of weeks that they're like, oh, I'm going to sell my 401k. I'm going to get rid of everything. I need cash. I need guns. And I'm like, yo, chill out. Biden can barely remember his own name. He isn't going to be able to get anything done. Obama was far more impactful on the world government or the world economy and the national government and local governments than any president in recent history. And we did okay.
Yeah, in fact, actually, I did quite well. And just doing the 401k under that, it was tremendous growth, because we were in such a depression. They call it a recession or whatever, but the buying at the bottom of the market like that, and now those returns are just gigantic because I stayed in. I know guys at Barnard that would play and get in and get out and get in and get out. And the study I saw to build on what you just said, Tyler, was over the course of like 100 years, they looked at it and they were like, if you took your money out for like the 5 biggest trading days, and nobody knew when those were, but now looking back, you can say that if you had just taken the money out for just those 5 days, you lost like 40% of value. Had you just, like you said, stayed in and just ride the wave. And you look at the trend, looking at the market, it steadily increases about 12%, 10 to 12% over the last 100 years, up and down, to include depression.
Yeah, that's right.
The rest of it,
The most successful people are the ones who do it consistently, every month or every 2 weeks, whenever you get paid. Small sums of money in your 401k. That's usually how people do it. And it's the people we're most impressed with, in this world aren't the people who made $500,000 a year and have X million dollars when they retire. It's the people who made $50,000 or $60,000 in their career and accumulated $1 million or $1.5 million.
I mean,
their kids through school. It's unbelievable.
It's anecdotal. It's anecdotal totally, but the people that I know real well, for the most part, that make big money. A couple doctors in there, some lawyers that, they make those $300,000-$400,000 a year salaries, those super high end salaries. They don't live they have no better future prospects than some of the guys that I know that are construction workers that, they're on the high end, they're making $80,000-$90,000 as a construction worker, hourly guy, not a guy like we're salary, just hourly guys, but they put that money away. I mean, some of those guys, there was one of the guys down in Vegas that had 3 houses. And one of them was a vacation house. I don't remember where he owned. And, he would just not work for 6 months at a time. He'd just take off for 6 months. It was union work. So the work kind of came and go. And if he just didn't feel like working, and now his wife was a dentist, I think, and she could make decent money. But he had that financial freedom to do that. And he wasn't making money. And there's guys that are making $400,000 a year that if they go without 2 paychecks, they are screwed.
Right.
I mean, they've got the nice fucking... They got a nice big boat and they got some other shit, but
it's certainly a lot more common than you think. So.
Yeah.
And what was the book, The Millionaire Next Door, that it talks about the millionaire next door is driving an F-150 that's 3 years old. It's not the guy driving around in a Aston Martin or whatever. Just.
I was bullshitting with a guy at a bar down in Vegas or down in Henderson. We were living down there, and he was actually a car salesman at I think it was either a Ferrari or a Lamborghini dealership that was right by it. And I was just bullshitting with him, and we got to talk. He's like, one of the biggest things people don't understand, that new people that come into this dealership business here, these high end cars, is you'll see it. All the new guys that show up, they'll go flock into the dude in a suit and a tie, and usually that guy is leveraged to the hilt. He's more worried about looking rich than actually being rich. It's the guy that walks in sandals and 30-year-old jeans and a fucking holy T-shirt. That's the guy that's got $30 million and can write you a check for a car.
Yeah, my cousin works for Bentley. He builds Bentleys here in California, actually, and he's from England. So he came to the United States, immigrated, he's an expat or whatever. And I asked him, I said, regale me with a story of, what you experience at that high end. I mean, like, you don't touch a Bentley for under like 300 grand. They're pretty fucking expensive, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's higher than that, honestly.
Yeah, and he said the exact same thing. He said the guy who could just barely reach, can barely put enough money away to buy one of these, comes in. He's got the Rolex and he's got the suit. He wants you to look at his shoes and all this. He said the guy who can come in and buy the whole damn lot is wearing khakis, sandals, and just wants to be spoken to like a normal human being. And like exactly what you just said. So I find that interesting. That there's a trend there.
Hey, living below your means is just as important as systematically saving. And it's,
one of the guys that I look to, sorry to interrupt you, Lester.
No.
One of the guys that's on YouTube, that you could call him an inspiration for what I'm doing now, but his name's Graham Stephan, and I think he just turned 30. And you remember in Vegas, John, those up above Henderson, all those houses they're building up on, they're cutting in the side of the mountain. He just bought a house up there for like $1.4 million. The guy's 30. He makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on YouTube, but he still refuses to buy coffee from Starbucks. And he reverse Google searches furniture so that he doesn't pay fucking retail prices. So, you'll see a thing at he'll see a chair that he likes. And instead of spending the $200 at retail, he'll reverse Google search it and find some Chinese place that makes it for $10 and buy it. And the guy makes $100,000 a month on YouTube or more sometimes. It's, right. And he does real estate. He was a real estate agent in LA. And I mean, he made money doing that, but he never went to college. He just started doing real estate in LA and hustling, and then started doing YouTube videos. Lived in a duplex in LA. The guy is making millions of dollars a year and still lives in a duplex in LA that he rents the other side out and does all of his YouTube content in his garage parked next to his car. So what you talk about living below your means, that is the most powerful way to financial independence. And I still splurge, just personal kind of talk here. I splurged. I mean, I've got a nice Suburban and a nice diesel F250 out there. One's a 2019, the other one's I think a 2017. They're both paid off because I had the ability to do that. I don't need those things. Those are living above my means. I get not above my means, but at my means. But that's because what I wanted. But on the other side, we do a ton of stuff to save money. We bought a house specifically with the intent of having a rental property on it, which above our garage, we have an ADU. And that helps out with our costs immensely. And because of decisions like that, investing in real estate when I was young, biting off the bullet, working through college and not just fucking I party a lot, but worked through college, did construction and worked a fuckload of hours, made a bunch of money, invested in real estate. We've gone through 3 rental properties now. We've sold one. We still have 2 of them. We've sold one of them. But because of that, it gave me the financial independence to quit a job. I literally reached the goal I'd been working towards 13 years. And when I reached that goal, I realized that wasn't the goal in life I wanted. This isn't what I wanted, where I was at. I was miserable. I didn't like where I was at. I mean, I enjoyed my work, but my life sucked. And the only reason I didn't have to keep trudging for another 20 years is because I made a bunch of decisions early on and young to set myself to be financially free. Now, I can't do this forever, but I can go get a job whenever I want now. That was kind of one of the epiphanies I had that was amazing, that you have to have this nest egg and you can never touch it. It always has to be there. Fuck, you can always go earn another one if you have to. Who cares if you lose it all? I had the best 8 months of my life I've had with my kids. We hopped in the car right in the middle of fucking COVID and drove all the way across the country. Saw Lester for this first time in how many years?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
8 or 9. It was whenever you were hunting. Last time you came out to hunt.
Yeah, I don't know when it was probably 2012, something like that.
So,
yeah.
Things like that I would have never been able to do. Take 3 weeks and drive around the fucking country and visit people.
Right. I would love to be able to do that sometime in the next couple of years. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's a goal. But like you said, living below your means, I choked on the payments at the bottom of the market for my house, and I'm so glad I did. Now that's worth double what I paid for it, and it becomes a lot easier. But instead of going out and buying a new truck, I went out and bought a Jeep, a 10-year-old Jeep, and drove that until it became unfeasible. And put all the money towards the mortgage, and pay down the mortgage. Now, if for some reason I go back to the home office, pay is cut or something, or something tragic happens, I can refi my mortgage, still maintain my quality of life, and cut my mortgage payment in half, less than half, because of the aggressive. You know, I mean, and refining it is a double-edged sword, because you reset the clock on the fucking amortization. But you know, so the amount of money going to your interest skyrockets, but you can still you really lower. You know, and everyone freaks out and wants to do it. It's kind of one of those traps, like I refied and I got a better interest rate. The banker's smiling all the way, you know, because you just reset. You're paying his mortgage on his house now with the amount of interest you're paying because you reset it.
Yeah. And
you're smiling because you got a great deal when you just get screwed. You know, like if you don't have to refi, you shouldn't. But in my case, if I have to, I can, and I can still, you know, take a pay cut and maintain my quality of life because I'm smart. You know, I did all the things Tyler just said. You know,
right.
Paid down. My truck is now $180,000 on it, but I take care of it. You know?
Well, maybe
it's time for a new truck.
Maybe you can kind of talk on this a little bit, Lester, but you know, not just getting started young, but all the different kinds of investing that are out there. That not that you just guys deal in with it, your guys' office, but that you deal with in personally. You know, it's kind of one of those deals that another one of those studies that everybody talks about, but nobody ever actually remembers where it's from. But, you know, they looked at a bunch of millionaires, people that make over $1 million a year. And one of the most, the average number of income sources they had was 7.
Right.
You know, they had 7 different forms of income coming in. And some of these people worked. They had a salary job, but they also had, you know, investments from real estate and investments from stocks, which those are two. I mean, you can have investments, and investments can be anything, right? As long as it's generating income. So, like, what are some of the things that you're doing, Lester? With you know, you're the money guy here. What like personally, what are some of the things you're doing?
Well, I mean, I think the most not that this is investing in alternative things, but you know, we save a lot of money. I think that's the greatest thing about being in this business, is because we see all of these case studies of you know, people who either didn't get started young or just don't save enough. So, you know, when I got out of the Marine Corps at 26 years old, I think I had 12 grand in my TSP account, which, but I made 12 grand my first year in. So I do remember, on a side note, the GI Bill was $100 a month.
It was horrible.
And I swear half the people said no.
Yeah.
And I get why they said no now, because my net pay every 2 weeks was like $400.
Yeah, dude.
Like, I would have put 20% of my money, or whatever, 10% of my money every month into the GI Bill. I don't even know if I'm going to go back to school. That's $1,200 out of 12 grand I'm going to make this year. It's I mean, I did it, which was great. Hard. But you know, it was. Yeah, I mean, it was.
How different were things at 18 though, when you were living in? Because I think the most vivid I had was in Pensacola, because the only bill I had was my cell phone bill, and I was always having to loan money to these other guys because they'd fucking go blow all their money somewhere. Because we only made like if you had the GI Bill at Picola, you were still only making like $300 a week or every other week. And so, so these guys had run out of money.
Speaking of living below your means, thank God I didn't have to pay for housing or food, because
fuck.
I think my WRX payment was like $350, and my insurance payment was another $350. So.
And then you hunted deer behind the barracks and ate that.
Right.
We had Marines who were married, and they were on food stamps. They had on-base housing, the whole bit, and they were on food stamps. They qualified.
I believe it.
You know,
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, New York was tough because we didn't have we got BAS, and we didn't have a chow hall. So if you spent all your money, you were shit up. You couldn't just go to the chow hall. You were shit up fucking creek, man.
Yep. Yeah. No question. Yeah, but anyway, I think, you know, coming into this business after that was certainly the greatest eye opener for me, because you know, not that I had that much ability to save when I was 21, but you know, even if I could have saved you know, a little bit, you know, that money is just worth exponentially more as you get older, just due to compound interest.
God, I can't remember the number.
Biggest thing I do.
I can't remember the number exactly, but I was talking with Kyle about this, John, way back when I was trying to tell him, stop buying shit and save your money. Cause like every dollar you spend at like 24, every $1 you spend is worth like $70 at your retirement age. It's something absurd like that. So like if you go buy something worth $10,000, yeah, that's 700 grand right there, big dog.
Yeah, and I when this COVID thing hit and all the banks changed all their rules and said you can do this, you can do that, now you can touch your 401k, blah blah blah. The guys around my job in my crew were all asking, well, I can touch my 401k. I'm just going to take 10 grand. I'm going to put it towards my car. And I was like, I'd whip out my calculator on my phone right then and there, and I'd show them. I'd be like, look, $10,000 in 20 years is like 200 grand. Like you're going to retire in 2 years. Like just if you don't contribute another fucking penny, you're to that 20,000. Yeah, up front it looks all like, yeah, I can touch it now. We'll be fine.
And that's if you do it at like 7 or 8% return. When a lot of these young kids, in their 20s, especially now, if they get a good hit in the market where they can get in, they can put a bunch of money on a low end, over their life, they're going to see what, Lester, probably 12 or 13%.
Yeah, I mean, I think the numbers are lower today, but I mean, that's only for the foreseeable future. The S&P's averaged 10.5%, something like that, over the last 100 years. So,
huge.
Hey, I always say that, when we get those calls, and not from people who are retired, who aren't saving anymore, or who are close to it, but when I get calls from people who are 35 years old, or kids of clients who are 25 or 30, and they want to stop contributing to a 401k because they just saw their balance drop 20%.
Right.
I guess it's counterintuitive, but those are the times that you should cheer for as a person who's contributing, because do you want to buy the S&P at 3,500 today, or if you're not retiring or spending your money anytime soon, would you rather buy the market at 3,000 or 2,500 or 2,000? That's an obvious answer, but it's a terrifying experience to go through. And I mean, I'm always a little confused why a 25 or 30-year-old feels like that, especially in a 401k.
Yeah. But
it is a very human emotion, and even for me, when I see my account balance go down in March, I'm not looking to spend it for another 20 years, but it's still a kind of a gut-wrenching experience to go through. So I understand it, but sometimes not logging in or not looking is really the best advice. I mean, provided you're invested properly, but that usually is the best advice.
Yep.
Yes. Forget it. Ignore it. But just contribute it, and just it's out of sight, out of mind. It's pay that you don't have.
And
it's the background and earns for you.
You just don't even realize you're missing it. Because if you're taking out 10, like let's say you start at 2%, right? You just take 2% of your paycheck every week. At Barnard, we get paid every week, which was nice. Some places are 2 weeks, some places are a month. So you started off, and that's what I did. I was like, all right, here's what we need to live. So I'm going to go a little bit higher, and I just started scraping money off the side, and and that was on top of my 401k. So I had my 401k, and I had my HSA, and then I had another. I was like, all right, let's take another couple percent, and we'll scrape that off, and we're putting this to an investment account, and basically a savings account is what it boiled down to. And every 6 months or so, I would tick that up another 1% or 0.5%. Or whenever I got a raise, I would take literally whatever half of that raise was, half of it, and save it. And you just don't even realize it, because the money you spend grows with how much money you make. It's just a human. I don't know what it is. It's just human nature for people. I mean, they just do it. That's what I was part of it. I did it too. But the advantage was I was cutting that money out, so much of it out. And by the end of our 4 years in Vegas of making good money down there in Vegas and everything like that, that's why I have 2 super expensive vehicles paid off, and I live in a nice house, and I have all this money saved. That's why. And it was just like you're saying, Lester, is throwing money in just constantly, little steady bits at a time. Even if the market's going up and down, it doesn't matter. Just keep throwing it in, because if the market goes up one day and down the other, you're in somewhere in the middle.
Right.
Seriously.
And
Same thing.
Yeah, and I always say, I think somebody pulls their money out of the market, you gotta think about when are you going to get back in. And I can, even we consider that a failing when somebody gets out of the market, especially when the money is under our control, just because they can't handle it anymore. When are you going to get back in? Are you going to get back in when the market drops another 10%? Logically, that would be a great time to do it, but then they're even more terrified, and they can't. It
might go down another 20%.
Yeah, it's only when the market has recovered and people are feeling better about things, and now it's up 10% from where I pulled out. Now it's time to give it a look and get. You've just lost a huge part of your return, and you've destroyed your investment returns.
Plus any dividends that you might have been, any dividends you might have been earning, or anything that's cash generating during that period, all of that stuff, you miss out on all of it, and now you got to fucking pay taxes on it.
Right. Yeah, so I think I understand that saving money can be a challenging thing because life is expensive. There's no doubt,
especially with kids.
With kids and trying to eat healthy and or even trying to eat, during spare time at work. And that's expensive stuff. And I mean, on the other spectrum, if you're a kid coming out of school and you've got $50 or $100 or $150,000 in student loans, I mean, that's like having a mortgage, and so life is expensive. They're not paying you $150,000 when you graduate.
You don't look around you. I mean, I did the GI Bill. I got 600% return. Whatever.
Yeah.
I was lucky. I did the GI Bill after I got half of mine at post 9/11, so I got a huge return on mine, thank God.
Yeah, and I did the kicker. That's George Bush's credit. He dumped a bunch of money in on top of the GI Bill to sustain it, and of federal money, and it really did good. I mean, so you don't have to graduate with student debt. You can figure out how to go to school. I knew guys who were non-trad students, and they were working, and they would work so many hours, and they took half the class load that I did, but they didn't graduate with tremendous debt. So I mean, if you're analytical and you're smart about your money, and you don't want to drink a $7 fucking latte, you can do and leave, at least with a zero balance. Maybe you don't have a lot of money in your bank account, but you're not upside down.
Definitely. And I think there's always places to cut.
Right. It's just that people don't want to do. A lot of guys don't want to do the effort, put in the effort to make.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey, and I don't agree with everything he says, but it is pretty logical stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I think
I read his book too, and there's quite a bit of it like I was already doing when I read his book.
Well, and there's so many.
If you want to keep up with the Joneses and have a new iPhone, and, all your subscription plans, and life is expensive. All these lease deals on cars, and you can spend a lot of money in a hurry. So I get it, but if you don't save now, I mean, you can look at what the government's doing with stimulus and currency debasement and all these other things.
Hey, some people want to be a Walmart greeter.
Yeah, well, hey, you gotta take care of yourself in this life. We're not. Right. We're not living in an age of pensions and a super solvent Social Security system. Even though I'm sure they'll figure out something to fix that in the near future. But you got to take care of yourself, and you got to create something, a nest egg that's going to take care of you and your family. And
stocks are not the only. There's so many ways out there to invest your money, and I don't want to say they're the safest because nothing's safe. But if you do your homework and you do things right, there's people. I mean, I didn't come up with this, but for Christ's sake, people out there make rubber dicks and sell them and make money.
Yeah.
There's anything you can do out there to make money and be successful. I mean, one of the biggest things that I got into was real estate and how advantageous that was. Now you got to do a lot of research and have a little bit of luck to be good at real estate, because you can really lose a lot of money doing that. It's a high risk, but it's a high reward as well. And I don't know that there's any other investment tool out there that has the tax advantages of real estate. Like I kind of stumbled into real estate a little bit, not knowing how advantageous the tax shelters were going to be for me when I became a high net worth individual, or however you want to, where I was bringing in a huge salary. You know, I was I was probably making twice as much as some of the other guys and paying less. Not just, I was paying maybe half in percentage, but I was paying less in total taxes than they were. And I was making twice as much money. And that's because of the advantages real estate gave you. And that those chickens come home to roost eventually. And I'm not going to get into the complications of tax law and everything. But there's other stuff. I mean, there's people that invest in baseball cards and art. Trying to think of some of the other stuff out there that people, really, you look at the ultra wealthy and what they do. And some of the shit that you think, like, why would you invest in that? Well, they're not doing it because it's fun. It's because there's some reason for it. Whether it's a tax write-off or whether it's, you look at cattle ranching and stuff like that, and how big corporations like Budweiser has a huge fucking cattle ranch. Why does Budweiser have a cattle ranch? Because it's a tax write-off. It's a place to put money and store money and not have to pay taxes on it. There's all sorts of stuff to it. One of the more interesting ones out there that, like, you and I have talked about quite a bit, Lester, Bitcoin as a storer of value and a hedge against certain things, and not just as a currency, which it is, but some of the other things you can get out of Bitcoin, which is kind of a vogue thing right now, and it's super volatile.
Yeah, it's definitely, well, I don't know if it's in vogue. It's certainly in vogue with a certain community.
It's popular to talk about, let me put it that way.
Barnard's building the transformers or whatever to do the substations to power the computers to go mine for these things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you told me that.
Money.
Yeah, Barnard's building. I don't know if I haven't seen anything lately, but built a couple of substations for cryptocurrency mining centers here in Montana, just because it's the power is cheaper here than it is in a lot of places, which is a big driver of it. Plus, I think the cold winters and not having to cool the server farms is probably advantageous too, considering it was 10 below here last week. But
just for some of our viewers, if I can jump in a little bit, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But for me, I understand that a dollar bill between me and you has meaning. I mean, I hand you a dollar bill and I can go buy a Pepsi with it or whatever. Like, we know the exchange. All right. So run me through, so that we have our faith, and it's not backed by government, it's not backed by precious metal anymore, but we have the faith that the United States is not going to fall and that dollar has value. Both of us agree. So at its core, that's what money is. Now, when you look at a blockchain, and we're talking, over the course of a couple of years, we've seen 6 years, we've seen Bitcoin go from $300, $350 or whatever it started out at, and it's gone up to 19. It's gone back down to 3. It's gone back up to 19 or 18 or 16, I think it is now. So $16,000.
This will blow your mind, John. You know what the very first transaction of Bitcoin was? The very first recorded transaction of Bitcoin. It was 10,000 Bitcoins for a pizza.
Right.
So now explain me when and I'll use Tyler's example. He's used this a couple times with me in private talks, but he would always say, hey, a gold coin in 1900 bought you a nice suit. A gold coin today buys you a nice suit, the same 1 ounce gold coin. So run me through how does that work with Bitcoin and its fluctuations, and why is there value? Why do I trust you that if I give you this Bitcoin and you say, okay, it's worth X?
So all of these discussions of currencies, and fiat currencies and governments, they're complicated. Why does a piece of gold bullion have value? Because we believe it does.
It's a societal agreement. I did work. Here's what you're going to pay me for my work, and then I can use this to pay other people. And it's just what that takes the picture of. Is it gold? Is it a paper money? I mean, is it seashells and fucking salt? All of those have been used for current. I mean, what was it? Is it orchids or whatever it was that made that big crash in Denmark way back? Was it orchids or was it whatever it was? Everything. Tulips. That's right.
Right. So with Bitcoin and Bitcoin's not a security, so we don't sell it at our firm. We can't even recommend it or anything to clients, but I do it on my own for fun. I think it's a really interesting concept with a lot of potential. But I think the main thing to get out there. A fiat currency, the euro, the yen, the U.S. dollar are all backed by institutions. They're all backed by a central government. And we, as citizens, as users, we have to trust the institutions that are controlling that currency, basically to be responsible with it and to not debase it into oblivion.
Venezuela.
And I think, Venezuela, and I'm in no way concerned in the short term about the ECB or or the United States dollar. But you look at a year like 2020, and we're going to have a deficit in a previously booming economy of $4 trillion. And in 2019, we had a deficit in a booming economy of, I think it was $1.2 trillion.
Record tax inlays and still at a deficit.
Right. So, a central bank is in charge of the flow of those dollars. With Bitcoin and crypto in general, but just talking about Bitcoin, and I'm not going to get in the weeds about cryptography and how it works because I am not an expert on that. But the appeal of Bitcoin is that the network and all of its participants are the overseers of that network. And this has to do with the miners come into play. Miners verify transactions every 10 minutes. They essentially solve a block, they solve a code. But the most important thing to know about Bitcoin is that it's a scarce asset. That's the appeal to me. It's a scarce asset that is, as far as we know, unhackable, unbreakable, cannot be destroyed.
Unhackable in the sense that you can't cheat it. You can't copy Bitcoins. You can have your shit hacked and get your Bitcoin stolen, but the system itself is pretty much for layman's terms, it's impervious to hacking because there isn't a central node. For example, a bank, your bank down the street has a ledger, right? It tracks all the money that comes and goes. It's the sole source. You can't go look at that ledger. You just have to trust that bank is doing its honest thing. Right. And the government makes sure of that and all that other stuff. That's the whole Fed system and all that. Bitcoin's ledger is all over the place. It's on the network. And it's constantly, everybody's got access to it, and it's constantly updating all over. So even if you take out one ledger and fake it, all the other ledgers that are the copy of it know that it's wrong. And that's what blockchaining is for, is it's that self-check, if you will. So blockchaining isn't just cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency uses the technology of blockchain, which is a technology that has a broad range of potential uses. But that's what it is instead of trusting one institution that is inevitably corruptible, because governments are corruptible, you basically entrust the community to babysit itself. It's like trusting, the safest place to put a treasure is in a den of thieves, because nobody trusts each other. It's kind of that idea.
So now segue, everything I've read about and heard about Bitcoin is all about its global economy, and it frees up the middleman. There is no middleman, and everybody can self-fund each other and all this, and all these positive, feel-good type things. But when you look at, like you were touched on treasury bonds earlier, when you look at, we sell a bunch of bicycles to China, or we buy a bunch of bicycles from China, and we pay them with U.S. dollars. They turn around, they can't spend the dollars in China, so they convert that to yuan, but the central bank of China comes over and buys our treasury bonds, because where else you can spend a dollar? You know what I mean? So there's a benefit, there's a kick, there's a return. Even though we spent the money, it eventually comes back, and vice versa. So when they sell us, that doesn't happen under Bitcoin. That goes away. How does that benefit the United States, say, or any country? I'm looking at this as not necessarily a positive thing, maybe a bad thing.
Well, what you just said there, John, that you see as a negative thing is what most of the people that talk up Bitcoin say is the best thing about it.
Right. Now, why is my question?
So, because you don't have to depend on the politics or the the differences of multiple countries. You know, for example, China props up its currency, right? It's a currency manipulator, has been for a long time. And that affects what you can do for business and everything in transaction. Bitcoin can't be affected like that. You can affect how much a currency is worth in Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's price is completely set by the market. It's unregulated, which is why it's so volatile. You know, that's the difference. Is people trade off. They're scared of volatility, so they ask for regulation, and that brings a whole host of problems. Bitcoin isn't regulated like that. It just goes based on how people. That's why you saw that huge run up 2 years ago, is because there was a couple of news articles and everybody was excited about it, so everybody was trying to buy it. It wasn't necessarily that Bitcoin was worth 17,000, you know, in a direct aspect. It was because, like Lester said, it was a scarce commodity, and the more people you have buying.
I think to think about it, you know, is there value in today's world for a system, or just call it currency? I guess you could call it simply currency. Is there a value for a currency that people around the world adopt? There is a limited number of that currency, or a limited amount of that currency. You know, there will be 21 million Bitcoin available in like 100 or 120 years, something like that.
And that's it, right?
They're constantly being mined, but there's a finite amount of it. So you have a limited resource. Every transaction that occurs is public, and it can be verified. And it's the job of the miners every 10 minutes to verify those transactions. They cannot be changed. And then lastly, is it useful to have an asset that I can transfer anywhere in the world almost immediately and almost for free?
And 100% securely.
Yeah.
And completely securely.
Now,
That's a... well, go ahead.
Sure, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
So I think, especially in a year like 2020, I mean, I don't think it's a mystery why the value has really surged since the beginning of the year. As you look at, you know, the United States, that's you know, they are printing dollar bills and increasing the money supply.
Quantitative easing.
We've been doing that for, you know, for 100 years.
Since Reagan, or not Reagan, since Nixon took us off the gold standard.
64,
yeah,
65.
Yeah, I mean, the history of fiat currency is not good when it comes to that. Now, the United States has been able to survive all of those things, but you know, is there a value to a system? And you know, really, that system has an infinitesimal amount of people as participants right now. But you know, is there a value to a transparent system that cannot be expanded through a central bank that's, you know, going to add more coins to the system, and can be transferred anywhere in the world, no matter the denomination, instantly and freely? I think that's a pretty neat concept, and there are all these real world uses for it. But I think, in its most basic sense, it's at least a very interesting asset, especially in a year like 2020, where you know, a lot of things have kind of gone off the rails. So.
Oh yeah, I agree with 100% of that. And for me, the libertarian in me says no Fed, you know, no regulation, go do this thing and be unregulated. And I love the idea. But going back to like Tyler's example, where a pizza was sold for 10,000 Bitcoins, so 1,000 Bitcoin, it tastes good. 3 weeks later, the guy
Dial up.
who made
You
the
cut out
pizza
there,
is
John.
now-
Dial it back a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah, you cut out
what
for a
was the last
second.
thing you heard?
About 10,000 for a pizza.
So like going like between like the libertarian in me who loves the idea and the guy who spent 10,000 coins on a pizza pie, and then the guy who made the pie 3 weeks later is not going out and buying a building because the currency, the 10,000 coins that he spent on a $15 item, you know, is not worth $1 million, you know, or
Well,
whatever.
that's a product of the. I mean, that
Change.
when that happened, John. That was completely different. It's kind of along the concept of
I know.
what did a Ford Model T a car cost back when they first made them? A couple $100, whatever it was. You know, houses were thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars, not the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The difference is the reason you don't have spikes with that with currency is because you have a central planner. They're preventing those spikes from happening. That's what quantitative easing is doing. You know, that's well, that's an oversimplification, I guess, but that's what the Fed does is it controls the money supply to keep huge spikes like that from happening.
Yeah, and I mean, all you're talking about, John, is supply and demand. There was no demand for Bitcoin when that happened, like zero. There were like 25 people using it on some, you know, on a network, just computer guys. There was no Coinbase where you could go buy, you know, put your dollars and buy Bitcoin or Ethereum. Or
you had to be a supercomputer nerd just to access it.
Yeah. So, you know, I think that's why it's such an interesting asset for the future. You know, that was the infancy of Bitcoin, but you could argue we're still in the infancy of Bitcoin. I mean, it's been the best performing asset of the 21st century so far. And if you, I mean, just think about the math. We've got 330 million people in this country. Right now, there are 19 million or 18 million Bitcoin in circulation. That doesn't even account for, you know, there are problems with maybe not problems. There are hurdles to Bitcoin. There are a lot of people who have died who never left anybody the private key to access those Bitcoins. They're locked up. No one's getting them back. The government has seized digital wallets. So there are actually less than that in actual circulation. But just mathematically, you know, 1/3 of a billion people in this country, 21 million eventual Bitcoin in existence. You start doing the math on that, and you look at the 1.3 billion people in India and China. If there is even the slightest usage, and you know, you see J.P. Morgan coming into it now, you see PayPal, Square, all have trading systems. I think the growth potential is just, you know, people look at $16,000 for, you know, one of these tokens. You got to think about network size. You know, right now the network's worth, the Bitcoin itself has a $300 billion market cap. So that's big, but you know, if we get into exponential usage and growth, and you know, every Wall Street bank on earth starts transacting in it, which, you know, there's no reason to believe that they won't. You know, you're talking trillions of dollars of market cap. And, you know, I mean, just simple math, if $300 billion market cap becomes $1 trillion and it's worth $16,000 today, well, all of a sudden you're at like a $50,000 price point if the market gets to $1 trillion. And I mean, then it becomes $5 trillion.
People act like it's not like Bitcoin isn't a real physical thing, right? It's literally just it's a serial number. A Bitcoin is a serial number, essentially. That's all it is.
It's a cryptographic program.
Right. But I mean, if you have a Bitcoin, you have a Bitcoin, it's just it's a serial number, and it's a secure, safe serial number, and one that you can't tweak with it, because then it shows up in the ledger and people know it's fake. You can't create them out of thin air. Mining creates them out of thin air, but that's a process. You can't just like change the code and have 2 Bitcoins all of a sudden. And because of that inherent security is what gives it value. That's what makes people want to use it. So it's what gives it value is the same thing that gives baseball cards value, or the same thing that gives art value, fine art value, or collectible cars, or you name it. Anything that's been given value, it's done because people want to use it, and there's a finite amount of it. You know, you talk about end of the world scenarios, and you know, where cash doesn't matter anything, but people are going to still use stuff to trade. So, you know, bullets and food and stuff are going to become your cash now, and what your money is. And Bitcoin is just filling that void in a non-apocalyptic manner, because it's a novel way to trade work. You know, that's all money is I do work, You give me something in replace for that work that I can then give to somebody else for their work.
But I also think it's a perfect like microcosm of the free market system.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just that it's this network that's just out there. You know, when a miner solves the block six times an hour, they are rewarded in Bitcoin. So it is in their interest to be first.
Yeah, a new Bitcoin gets made every 10 minutes.
Right. So that incentive system that you are going to get something by verifying the network and verifying the transactions makes this thing efficient. And, you know, it's in those people's interest to
maintain the security.
Maintain security and keep the network going. And, you know, the higher the dollar amount of Bitcoin you can get, the more incentive there is to do that same thing. So, yeah. So I think it's, you know, there's always a risk in this stuff. You know, I don't know if at some point government steps in and, you know, ruins the one thing that makes it so attractive, which is this decentralized nature of it. You know, I guess the government at some point could say, you know, you're not permitted to transact in Bitcoin anymore, or, you know,
this is an illegal currency.
Yeah, there's a tax levied on every transaction. I guess that's how they could kill it. So there's always a risk with that stuff. But it seems like bigger and bigger institutions are turning on to the benefits of it, and I think it's pretty exciting stuff. You know, it's for the same reason we own you know, gold for some clients. I think it very much mimics a lot of the same qualities, just with, you know, imagine if you had your gold bullion and, you know, I could send it to my you know, my sister-in-law in Europe. I could send her $20 completely free of charge, and she could have it in like 3 seconds. You know, she doesn't have to go open a Citigroup account, get me the wiring instructions,
pay transaction fee
off top. So I think it's pretty cool. So it is amazing to me that you can't do that. I mean, you could do it through PayPal and Square, but, you know, there's certain options, and it's different. Yeah. Right. Venmo. So yeah, it's
and you can't buy this as
cool.
Like as an investment, like officially, like, right, Lester, like you guys as your business, you can't touch it because it's not a security, right?
But you can buy it. It's not called Bitcoin, right?
I can buy it on my
personally.
Personally, yeah.
But you can't go to anywhere.
An asset. Yeah, it's an asset, not a security. So, yeah, and you can.
It's an asset, yeah.
Yeah, especially. There are all these. You can buy them on Square now. I guess Venmo just rolled out their system. Coinbase is the big one. I use that.
Yeah, Coinbase. Yeah.
I mean, even if you look, a lot of the bigger charities are actually getting to where that's one of their payment methods now. You can give to charities with Bitcoin, and I mean that's how you can see it starting to be mainstream. Because the more people that adopt it, you know, it's kind of like I was thinking about this today when we were thinking about doing this podcast. You know, you think about early adopters and what it takes. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen that marketing graph that shows, you know, it's a bell curve of early adopters and, you know, it gets all the way through. Like it's like with a cell phone, right? You have people that'll buy the brand new cell phone, and then you've got people who have a cell phone that's 6-7 years old still that has none of the technology of the new phones, and they're fine with that. But you have people that will go wait in line for fucking 10 hours to buy a goddamn brand new phone instead of wait a week. Anyways, so Bitcoin's kind of like that, and the difference is once technology, like right now, everybody has a smartphone. Just about everybody does. It's really hard to go buy a phone that isn't some kind of smartphone now. You can still do it, but you got to try. Whereas if you go 10 years ago, only a few people had smartphones, and they were really expensive, and everybody was still using, you know, there were still Nokia flip phones, and the the BlackBerry was still alive 10 years ago, and all of that other stuff. As this progresses and gets more centralized, with more people accepting it as a currency and more people wanting to use it, it's going to get there, especially when it comes to really big transactions. I mean, Bitcoin's kind of tough because of what it is and its limited transactions, which is why there's other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin Cash and stuff. And we won't get into that. But, when you talk about moving large sums of money for like, banks buying other banks or somebody, eventually buying real estate, things like that. This is you don't need an escrow account for the money anymore because you can physically go see, okay, this person has 2 Bitcoins. They have them. I can see them. They're there. Whereas, because the ledger's public. Whereas if they tell you they have 4, but in reality they only have 2, you can see that prior to the transaction.
That's a benefit. Yeah. Huge benefit.
So it doesn't necessarily get rid of escrow because escrow is for different purposes. But when it comes to moving large sums of money, now you're not paying these huge fees to companies that their only existence is to just charge fees.
Yeah.
Makes this free trade of money, like Lester's talking about sending somebody money in Europe. Poof, there it is.
Right. Yeah, I'm excited to see the future of it. I do know that I think it's in the interest of central banks to fight against stuff like. I mean, you even saw, Jamie Dimon come out. I don't know what that was, 3 or 4 years ago, and say it's a scam and it's a bubble. And I would actually agree it was a bubble back in.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that.
It was. Yeah, there was a mania around it, but
I mean, didn't it go from 20,000 back to like 10,000 in 2 weeks or something like that?
Yeah. Huge
seller. Pretty quick, and then it was at I think it was at 3,700 back in March when the pandemic crash came. But anyway, he was saying that 3 and 4 years ago, it's a scam, and now J.P. Morgan is the first large institution to start their own crypto entity or whatever they did.
Now I'm speaking off the cuff here a little bit, so I might be wrong, but so Ethereum's another one of the cryptocurrencies, right? And its whole entire purpose, Ethereum, its whole purpose, now you can trade it for dollars and stuff, but its original purpose was it was a currency that universities used to allocate processing time.
Yeah, that's I'm not as well versed on it.
So that basically they would, if I gave you this much time to process on our big server farm, you would have to give me 10 Ethereum, and then I could eventually use that Ethereum to process on your server time. And that's what Ethereum was. But it's a cryptocurrency. It's another blockchain system. It works a lot different than Bitcoin does when you get into the nuts and bolts of it. But it's one of those things where you talk about when you're talking about free markets, Lester. It's perfect because you're letting people come up with better ways of doing something rather than depending on the government telling you this is how we're going to do it. You got somebody that shows up and goes, hey, we want to trade server time. Let's make a currency. And that's all this currency's for. And now because of the hype of everything, it's turned into more than that. But I mean, think about that. These guys their work was their time on their server farm. And instead of going through all the hurdles that an institution would have to go to, could you imagine the headlines if universities were trading money back and forth for server time? It would the fear that they'd be like, fuck no, we're not letting anybody use our server time. But instead, they came with a non-monetary currency to do that. And you think about all the other stuff that you could do that for that gets around kids with fucking lemonade stands and getting shut down because they're collecting money. They get around it now in all these stupid municipalities because you donate. You donate. Here's $10 to donate for your lemonade versus charging for it. And that's how the Karens that would show. I couldn't imagine if somebody showed up and tried to shut down my kid's lemonade stand. I mean, I'm in Montana, so it probably wouldn't happen. But there's stuff like that exists now that they can't do anything, that the governments can't, overbearing governments can't get their fucking fingers into, which is going to drive them nuts. The more and more it goes that way, they're going to fight it. Like you said, it's completely in central banks.
They'll figure out some way to insert themselves.
I would be impressed if Joe Biden could say fucking Bitcoin, let alone even understand what it was. Not worried about that clown. Nancy Pelosi's usually too fucking drunk to understand what's going on either.
Yeah, but I mean, like the law of unintended consequences, like they pushed everybody in Seattle and Portland and everything to go to these EVs. And so everybody went to these EVs because they hiked the cost of gasoline on purpose to encourage it. and then they gave tax breaks to encourage it, and then they built lanes on the highway to encourage it, and then they go, oh shit, where's our revenue from the gas sales? Oh, now we have to go to a mileage tax. So, there's this unintended consequence. Like,
Hey,
oh, yeah,
you guys should buy EVs because you don't have to pay gas tax. And everybody goes and buys it because they don't have to pay gas tax. And now it's like, oh, well, sorry, now we're going to charge you a mileage tax. And we're just like, well, what the fuck? That was the whole purpose I bought that. Right. Like nobody saw that coming.
Right.
Did you see Did you see the new proposal last week? It was actually Deutsche Bank came up with the idea, but their economists are encouraging governments to assess a 5% wage tax on anybody who has the privilege of working from home. Due to the pandemic.
Privilege of working from home. Yeah. These people don't have kids. Whoever said that?
Yeah, it's absurd. It's absurd. But if you are lucky enough to be
Deutsche Bank comes up with some pretty horrible fucking ideas. I mean, they're one of the originators of the negative interest rates too, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they had some hand in privilege.
That's a whole other.
I'm going to charge you money to hold on to it for you.
Let's do a podcast on privilege.
Oh,
yeah.
Just on what the fuck.
I think we can hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, that's their advice for governments around the world. So.
Well, I was seeing it's funny. There's a couple articles that I caught this last couple of days that were hilarious, and it was in Portland. There was one of the city council members or something. I don't think it wasn't a mayor. I'm pretty sure it was a city councilwoman. She said that, and it might have been Seattle. It was somewhere over in Crazyville. But one of the people that was coming out against, people don't need 911, or it was something about if you can dial 911, you're privileged. And then her fucking Lyft driver cancels her fucking trip and she calls 911.
Yeah, because, no, he had the window down because Lyft.
Oh, that's right.
Lyft
for the coronavirus.
For coronavirus.
Window down, air flowing.
The window up, and he said no. And then she freaked out on him.
Oh, that's right.
He's like, get out.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
And then Minneapolis, shockingly, I was looking at a news article about that. I think they're the only ones besides Seattle to actually get through and go through a defund the police process and lower. And police are just leaving in droves. They're just fleeing Minneapolis. Like they're to the point now where they're putting in contingency plans. The chief of police and it's not the city planner, but it's somebody else who deals with planning on the Metro Police side. Contingencies on what is the process to triage a 911 calls. Like we got to start putting this plan together because we're not going to have enough cops to put them on the street anymore. He said they've had to pull all of their desk cops off and put them into the street. And Minneapolis is just ravaged by crime waves. You've got community organizers saying that they haven't seen anything like this since it was like the 80s or something when I can't remember. Minneapolis had a funny name, something about Murderapolis or something like that they came up with because crime was so bad. Like what did you fucking people think was going to happen? And yet you still have, I don't know if you guys saw the whole Democratic party, that leaked phone call. Somebody leaked the phone call of the Democrats having their little powwow after the election. And, AOC and all the squad members, as smart as they are doubling down on how we need to stick with the defund the police narrative. And you've got guys like Joe Manchin going, defund my butt. Are you retarded? You can't fucking, I don't live in New York like you do, you jackass. The people like cops out here.
Yeah.
Which you look at statistics, African Americans overwhelmingly support police, anyways. So it's dumb to the whole defund the police thing. Just it's it's one of those things that the more you try to understand it, the stupider you feel.
Right, and that goes with I did a little short about the border wall and talked about how being a dad transcends race, and it does. Like these are mothers, these are husbands, these are fathers. They don't want they want their kids to be able to play in the front yard and not get hurt, and that only happens if you have the cops.
Not have to play dodge bullet.
Right? Yeah. You take away the cops and people are like, why do I have to pay? I have to, follow the rules, It's ridiculous. AOC is good at bartending.
Someday.
And it sucks. It's going to be good when everything settles down here because I feel like there's the pot's boiling. It hasn't boiled over yet. and until somebody turns down the heat. And the media is not going to turn down the heat because that's how this chaos is how they generate revenue, dude. You know, just because Trump got elected, the chaos isn't going to stop because they're completely dependent now on chaos to generate revenue at these news organizations.
Right.
And they're addicted to it. Yeah, AT&T wants to bail on CNN now. And
it wants to bail on CNN because they don't have Trump to bash on anymore.
They won't make money because if you look where CNN was before Trump, they were dying. And the narrative that everybody's pushing narratives out there. It's there's a lot of guys that I really enjoy watching on YouTube and stuff, but they've even gotten into the extreme where, and it's not because I don't think they generally believe this stuff. It's just they're totally dependent upon the clickbait for it. I mean, you guys all saw it. You saw the whole watermark fucking watershed CIA scam on fucking ballots. And I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm like, okay. And the same people that are pushing this are definitely, and I'm not saying there's not a deep state, right? There's definitely a deep state. I don't know.
Sure.
You can call it the bureaucracy or whatever you want. There's an organization there that his whole goal in life is just to keep itself alive. And
Epstein murdered himself.
Now I'm gonna have to edit that out probably, John. Thanks, because of YouTube. But I'm sitting here and I was talking to somebody about this, and they're asking me about, did you hear about the watermark thing? And I'm like, wait. So there's a deep state, right? You would say that there's a deep state, yeah, and the CIA is part of that. Oh, most definitely. Okay, so the CIA, that's the deep state that's been trying to overthrow Trump, are also at the same time going to create watermarks to help him stay elected. So this is the story you're feeding right now, right? Oh, and then usually it just goes off somewhere from there. But the big picture is everybody's focusing so much on stuff that doesn't matter, that doesn't change anything, rather than the stuff that does. Like local elections. Montana did fantastic this election cycle. This is a state that is purple. People think about a super conservative state, but people don't vote down ballot very often in this state. They vote both sides of the way. And you can say what you will about some of our candidates, because it was a pretty bad election for governor as far as our choices. We did not have good choices as Montanans as governors. We just did the best of what we had. But we vote Republican all the way down the ticket, and they talk about flipping the governorship. We didn't, because Bullock tanked his own chances at being a representative by doing his whole facade with everything. But those elections on the state level, on our representatives and our state representatives, just at the state legislature, not the federal legislature, are so more important than who the president's going to be. I mean, it's funny because what happened with Trump, and you see all the people on the left freaking out about Trump, is exactly the same thing that people on the right did to Obama in the first 4 years. I mean, it's a mirror image of each other, of how hyperbolic and how reactive it was. And guess what? Not only did the country survive his first term, it survived his second term. And it might not have been as great as it was, but it still grew. People still made money. Still, nobody died. Yeah, the foreign policy. I mean, you can get into the details about, people died because of foreign policy and blah, 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 blah. But that's going to happen regardless of who's in charge, right? People are going to die in foreign policy. But the idea that Trump was going to destroy this country, I just sat back and laughed, and I was like, wow, this is what I looked like when Obama got elected in 2008. Okay, now I understand why everybody just kind of pushed me away and didn't want to talk to me or didn't want to associate with me that were on the other side of the aisle, because they were like, this guy's fucking nuts. But those same people are the people that went completely batshit bonkers with Trump and have been for the last 4 years. And in reality, the guy has been a pretty... the bad stuff that has come from Trump is pretty small. Now, I'm biased to it. I agree. I mean, people that are for bigger government and stuff probably viscerally disagree with that, and that's fine. We can have that disagreement and talk through it. But Biden and Kamala Harris aren't going to be able to do much, period. I'm pretty sure, looking at Georgia, the one seat, the recount's actually going to happen for that Senate seat as well. And he only needed a very small number of votes to get over that 50%. Because Georgia's you have to have a majority. You can't just have the plurality. You got to have 50% of the vote to. That recount's going to go on through next week. So one Senate seat might end up going Republican anyways. And the second one, if you go look at through all the numbers and everybody, because there was like, I don't know if you looked at the ballots for that special election in Georgia, there was literally like 30 candidates for that Senate seat. I'm not even joking, like 30 candidates. And if I went through and I tallied them all up I threw out all the independent or non-affiliated party votes and just took R versus D votes on the different candidates. And there's way more R than there is D for that second seat. Now, that might not mean anything, but that gives me hope on a level. Now, you're going to see an election cycle unlike anything you've ever seen in your entire life in Georgia. I feel sorry for the people of Georgia because we don't have to watch YouTube ads anymore and listen to all the politics, and it's going to be 10 times. You're literally not going to be able to see another ad in Georgia probably for the next month because it's just going to be fucking, everybody's going to throw so much money. I mean, you got politicians, you got news anchors joking about, and not even joking. Some people, hey, you can go get a timeshare. You can do this just so you can vote in the election. Let's let the Democrats win. And not only is that insanely illegal, it's illegal. It's illegal to tell people to do it too. So, but
I want to argue with you a second because I don't think, I'm Republican. I'm libertarian, but I lean. That's a wasted vote to vote for the libertarian. A lot of times.
Oh, I would in the system we have right now, a third party vote's a complete waste.
But yeah, complete waste. So you kind of have one or the other if you're smart. But I don't think. I think what you saw the guys going against Obama, they formed the Tea Party. Now, when they rallied, and they didn't burn shit down. There wasn't litter everywhere. And when the people that came out against Trump, absolutely, I mean, they were getting in people's faces, screaming at them, spitting at them, all kinds of stuff. And I mean, it was maybe the same thing happened, but one was much more dirty, for lack of a better term.
John, I'm talking more. I was talking more about your family members, the people that not the very extreme. The extreme side of the left is obviously far worse than the extreme side of the right as of late. That FBI study that talks about white nationalism being the biggest threat, I think, is a complete load of shit. But
there's more people registered transgender than there are in the Ku Klux Klan. That should tell you something about white extremism.
Well, they also lump the entire everybody who's part of the Proud Boys as a white nationalist, which is funny because there's a lot of black and Mexicans in there, and I don't know how you're a white nationalist when you're a black and a Mexican. But beside what I was talking about, John, is people that you deal with on your everyday life. Normal political conversations, normal as they can be, not the extreme end of the activism side. Just
it could end, but I'm with you. I think our republic's stronger than people think. And I was there too. I'm like, Obama's going to tear it apart, and especially when he canceled the space race, or space
shuttle.
Program, space shuttle. Like we had to call Russia. I mean, JFK must be spinning like a rotisserie chicken when he saw that. What? But I mean, there's some pretty distinct differences between the Obama administration and the Trump administration when it comes to that. Like literally black and white. No pun intended. You might need to edit that one out too. But like it is like I think our forefathers were fucking brilliant geniuses to be able to set the system up to make it so hard to crack, like one way or the other,
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I always, my dad actually always says, to calm people down who are on one side or the other. There's the self-correcting mechanism of our government is amazing. And you look at a Jimmy Carter in the 70s, led to Ronald Reagan, and the George W. Bush, with all the wars, led to the other side with Obama, and extreme leftism, whatever you want to call it, with Obama, led to Trump. Just throwing away basically every institutional idea of politics. And the last 4 years were pretty crazy, and now we've got probably Biden, Harris, and maybe split government. But
one can only hope.
Even with Obama, he had 2 years
of a supermajority
control.
Not just that, he had a super majority. Not just they kind of controlled. They had a filibuster proof.
Yeah, but 2 years later, the people spoke, and then it was over. Then it
other
was,
direction.
Yeah, then you had to have some level of compromise.
And then I think, if memory serves, we had the same thing. We didn't have a super majority, but we controlled everything for 2 years.
That's right. With Trump, right?
And
Yeah, but we didn't have a
not much.
supermajority, which is a huge difference because the
Right.
filibuster did stop several things, and then you had guys like John McCain who voted with the blue. And that's the other thing. 52 isn't 100% guarantee on things because you have Susan Collins, the dipshit name, what's
Right.
that ass clown's name, Mitt Romney, and the other lady up in Murkowski. Those three senators are middle of the road senators on things. And I don't want to, I'll attack Mitt Romney. I think Mitt Romney's a giant piece of shit. But the other two, they vote for what their constituents want. And that's fairly obvious because who is it? It's Susan Collins in Maine, right? They had her down by like 10, 15 points and she resoundingly won because she understood and she votes for what her constituents want, which isn't always with the Republican Party, which is great. But when it comes to some other stuff, you, like Lester's saying, you need a split government, man. If they go after the tax cuts, which is just a political stunt, there's no factual basis in anything they say when they argue about the Trump tax cuts. There's none. They talk about it hurting lower class. It didn't. Every argument they make it sound like when rich people get more money, it's like people are fucking Scrooge McDucks and they've got all this money and it sits in a vault and it doesn't do anything. That's the perception people have when they think of rich people and their money. What they don't understand is rich people's money is working. Rich people's money is what pays for your roads in your city to get done. Who do you think buys those municipal bonds? Who do you think buys all the loaned money out there? Who do you think helps pay for your mortgage at your house? All of that money comes from the wealth of rich people being invested in their communities.
Not only that, but it's kind of become a joke. I mean, 2019 was, and this is under Republicans, but 2019 had the largest inflow of tax receipts in the history of America by far. And they still had a $1.2 trillion deficit. So, it's not, what does that say about, if they raise taxes 20%, it's not like they're going to balance the budget. They're going to
spend more.
And so, until you show me that, the increase in tax receipts are going to let you do X, Y, and Z, I can't really take it seriously at this point. So
who's going to pay for that shrimp?
To your point, Tyler, just because you take another 10 cents out of my pocket as a voter doesn't mean you're getting it. It's not going to make you any better off. It's just going to make me a little more miserable.
And somebody gets to study a shrimp running on a treadmill.
Yeah.
But, or the millions of dollars they poured in. I think it was $500,000. They did a study to say that when you drink more, you become more promiscuous. In college.
Oh, there you go.
God, I would have never have known that.
I missed out on $500,000. I could have done that study for half price, $250,000.
The real question is how do we get studies like this? How do I get paid $500,000 to do that? I mean, that's like a study where they were given 6 months to do it and they totally fucking forgot about it. And 3 days before it's due, they're like, "Oh, hey, quick, type the paper up real quick."
Right. Well, hey, the efficiency of government and government spending. I mean, Tyler, and I don't know whether this is true or not, but I thought the military was a pretty efficient, brilliant organization. Great. At least the Marine Corps was, I thought, pretty darn effective at its job. Let's just go there. I don't know if efficient would be the word, but in
effective.
A squadron,
very effective because efficiency didn't matter.
Yeah, right. But when you're in a squadron, you have X dollars budgeted for a year. Well, come December, I don't know what the number was. I got $5 million left.
We still got to spend it.
Cut my budget next year. Let's go to Hawaii. Stay in the outrigger reef, and
or fly over to Nantucket for the afternoon and do touch and goes, and then buy fuel and
or
buy
go
lunch.
Get some lobsters up in
Maine. Pizza in Chicago.
For us, we would do our if you had a certain number of airplanes down in our squadron, you would get the other squadron down the road to fly and burn your jet fuel, so you could maintain the budget because they're like, oh, you don't need this money. Same thing with the rounds. I had our instrument would tell us to be like, don't bring these back. You know,
Well,
because
it
we're not
wasn't.
gonna
It
get
wasn't
next
just
year.
inside our squadron either. We at the end of the, because it was October, we would always get phone call. All these mission September and October, I felt like were always the best times to. That's like when the fucking awesome missions showed up because everybody was looking to spend money, and people don't
Right.
understand that. But when like the Air Force has us haul something, they pay us. And there's money that change. I don't know exactly how it works, and I guess I could be misinformed. That's the way I was always told
Nobody
it happened.
does.
But yeah, nobody knows how it actually works. But you'd always see all these missions crop up at that time frame at the end of the fiscal year because everybody was trying to spend their fucking money. And that kind of, some of the bosses that I worked for when I first got to the field, we would be talking about this shit, and I'd be telling stories about the Marine Corps and just going to do things to burn up the squadron money at the end of the year. And they go, "Well, I fucking sure as hell hope you don't do that here." And I'm like, no, that's a different world. We make money here.
You know, you brought it up. Funny anecdote. I got my ass chewed because we were going to Korea from Okinawa, and one of the pilots overfilled. Somebody got the genius idea to let the pilots fuel the planes, and they overfueled our external, which sits in the middle of our fuselage. Okay, so we didn't have. If we were moving forward, we could take off. Okay, but if you were to pull into a hover, you'd have to roll the fucking thing out the back because you didn't have enough. You would over torque the plane, and so it was bad. So like, Corporal Door, we want you to go out there and get that fuel, get that plane defueled. So I called the defuelers on our job site, on our base, got nothing. They're both broken down. So I go to Foster, and they have a defueler, and he's like, yeah, well, it's still full, it works, but it's full. We haven't sucked it up, haven't defueled the defueler yet. And so I was like, all right, Kadena Air Force Base is right down the road. I called, 5-6 phone calls go by, and I'm talking to one of their fuelers. They call me back, and they're like, we would love to. They're like, but in order for us to get the truck to Fatema from Kadena, we have to have escorts, and then it becomes a matter of, is the Marine Corps paying for it, or
As the Air Force,
to your point, no one knew how it worked. So I was like, okay, no harm, no foul. I'm like, thanks, no problem. Next morning, I put it in the past. I'm like, listen, we're just gonna have to chance it that this plane's not gonna have a mechanical failure, and we'll just keep forward here. We won't overtook the plane. I'm like, no big deal, right? Oh my God, I skipped like 5 or 6 chains of command to do that. Like I was supposed to go through the base colonel's office and get their PAO involved, who was going to contact their PAO before they talked to the fueling and da-da-da. There was like this red tape, and I'm just like, fuck this red tape, making a fucking phone call. Like I could do all this with 411. We didn't even have smartphones, but he pinned me up against the floor and said, what are you doing? Why is the major yelling at me? The top, Why is the major? The major wants to know why the colonel. My lieutenant colonel just got his phone call from the colonel.
Colonel got yelled at, so he yelled at the lieutenant colonel, who yelled at the major, who yelled at the fucking sergeant major. I'm surprised the sergeant major yelled at you. Usually, a sergeant major yells at a staff sergeant or something, and then.
No, he came. Oh, you told me to do a job. Fuck.
By the time it gets to you, I heard you had sex with the general's daughter.
Exactly. It gets worse and worse and worse.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. No one knows how it works. I'm like, defuel the plane. Got it. No, don't do it.
My favorite, real quick, probably my favorite story from the Marine Corps is a fueling story. We were in Yuma. I think we were in Yuma. No. We were at Nellis. I don't know. Right, we were somewhere. We were there for
somewhere hot
weeks, and we had a day off, but we still went flying on our day off for fun. So we flew. I had a great pilot and great crew. It was really fun. But the pilot told me, let's go fly to the Grand Canyon, just do some sightseeing and have fun. And he's like, BOTKIN, plan it up. I'm like, okay, great. So I called the airport. It was Grand Canyon. I don't know, it was Grand Canyon National Airport or Grand Canyon Regional Airport, whatever. Made sure we could land. That was no problem.
And they had fuel.
I told him we're going to need gas. And I swear I told him how much we needed.
You probably did.
Anyway,
he probably thought you said the number wrong.
I'm sure he did. But anyway,
there's no way he needs that much.
Yeah, right. So we flew there. We did a little sightseeing tour, just ourselves. We landed, and then I called the FBO, and I'm like, they're like, type. I'm like, KC-130. We need 6,000 gallons of fuel. And they said, say again? how much fuel? 6,000 gallons. Yeah, like whatever that was, 40,000 pounds or whatever it was. And he's like, standby. And I remember
is that when your heart started to go,
Sort of. I had talked to one of the dudes earlier, and I figured it wasn't. But this place is used to putting, I don't know, 50 gallons in a Cessna,
right,
or whatever.
Their fuel truck is an F-250.
Yeah, right. So they eventually pulled out like 3 fuel trucks to us, and anyway, I remember the FBO had a deal. First of all, we were like heroes, Like this woman came, the manager, whatever. She took us in her private car. She took us for a tour of whatever that famous part of the Grand Canyon is, and took us to lunch. And anyway, they had some deal like every 100 gallons you buy of gas, you get a case of beer, a shirt, and a hat from Grand Canyon Airlines. No shit.
Lester bought more gas from it a day than they've sold in 10 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we told them like we didn't need all of it.
Yeah.
But they brought us a pallet of like, it was either Bud Light or Coors Light, and then like boxes of shirts. I still have this green hat and green shirt, Grand Canyon Airlines on it, but it was great. Everybody on the crew had a good night. So.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, shit, guys. I think I think it's about time we wrap her up. We got,
it's been a while.
Lester's a couple hours ahead of us, and he's got to get to bed, and I've got a ton of work to do in front of me, and you've got to get up in the morning, John. But it's not too late for you yet, so.
No, I gotta get up. I stayed up to midnight last night, and I roomed with Brian Yalvik, and he's like, we were up for like 21 hours. It made me really think about my life. I'm like, why do I get up for work at 3 in the fucking morning? What am I doing?
Wow.
Which literally, I'm up at 3:15, and I'm out the door by 4, so I can be there by 5. Plan to work, so I can work 12. I'll work 12 tomorrow anyway. Like,
oh wow!
Go. I'm away from my family, all that good stuff. So, but
tomorrow is a work day. I get to sleep until 6 because I don't have to go hunting. So.
Have to go hunting.
Yeah, right.
Well, shit, Les, I know we kind of did a financial one here, but I think we'll probably have you on more often. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
Yeah, we should do something revolving around hunting or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Talk about how dumb Pennsylvania is versus Montana with hunting laws.
Yeah, actually.
And how you're not supposed to use a lever action here.
In Montana?
Yeah, that's a swipe at John.
But today, November 15th, 2020, is the first day, I'm pretty sure the first day in history where you can hunt on Sunday in Pennsylvania.
Well, they finally changed that law, huh?
Only 3 days this year. So there's only 3 Sundays. It's the next 3 Sundays, I think. One for archery, one for firearms.
It's one of those old archaic rules, dude.
It goes back to the blue laws. That I guess, Sunday is the Sabbath and it's for worship and relaxation and
hunting was working, not fun.
So, yeah, it sucks because, you have one half of your weekend to hunt.
You still can't lean a loaded rifle up against a car, though, can you?
That's right. I'm sure that's on my record somewhere.
That first year he came out here and he saw Chris and I loading up the truck full of loaded weapons, the confused look on your face was...
Oh, I was freaked out.
Wait, we're going to break the law here. No.
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, that's why
we got dinged for it in Washington State. He went duck hunting. It was raining. He had a camper top on the back. Put the camper top, lowered the tailgate, put a shotgun on that, and then here comes the game warden, and walking around, and he's like, hey, can I see your firearm? He goes, yeah, it's right there on the tailgate. And the game warden says, is it loaded? He goes, yes, sir. He goes, that's the problem. It's in your vehicle. And it's loaded. It was just laying in plain sight on the tailgate, disclosed. There it is. Yeah, it's got 3 rounds. And shells in it, and that was it. He's still fighting it. It's a felony, to do that.
Yeah. Well, I shit you not. I was getting ready for a hunt like 10 years ago. I don't know, 15 years ago, with a group of guys. We're doing a deer drive. The first and last time I'll ever do a deer drive, by the way. But it was shotgun only. I loaded my shotgun with slugs. I didn't even put one in the chamber, but they were in the tube, and we're ready to go. Game Commission pulls up, and the guy starts walking. He talked to my friend or whatever, and then he starts walking towards me. I'm standing next to an ATV. ATV's off. It's just parked. And as he comes up to me, I put the gun down. Like it was like a natural courtesy thing, Like
I'm not going to carry a firearm when you come at me.
Yeah, it's like holding a pistol. Cop comes, like you're probably going to put the pistol down.
Make them
Well, you don't want to be threatening or something. So I put it down. He's like, "Let me see that." I'm like, here you go. Is it loaded? He's like, "Yes, sir." And he takes him out of the tube, and it goes through the whole rigmarole. It's illegal. He writes me a thing, and I'm like, I put it down because you came up to me. I was about to walk into the woods. And he's like, that's a violation. Blah, blah. Oh, dude was so mean. And I even went to court to try to fight it, and the judge was like, well, you got a ticket. Whatever. But anyway, I know that.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right.
Well, I'm going to go make some
right,
dinner.
Man.
Thanks for hanging out, boys. This was fun. Appreciate it. It was good to see you, Les.
I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Bitcoin, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Good to see you guys.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.